Suddenly, I experienced the most horrific pain I remember ever experiencing in my life, which says a lot because I've survived not one, but two traumatic brain injuries. Oh my God! Ah! I yelled at the top of my lungs to my partner, Nanette! That sudden pain was followed by volcanic heat, so I tore off my clothes. And she comes and she sees me naked and she says, "Are you okay?" "No, no. Why are you naked?" "Hot, hot." This volcanic amount of heat that surged through my body was followed by horrific nausea. "Tums! Tums!" I yelled. And she ran to the bathroom to get me some Tums, and I chugged them like there was no tomorrow. And then, as quickly as the pain had come, it ended. And the Tums began to take their effect, and the nausea began to subside. And I actually reached a place where I could put my clothes back on. What does a normal person do when they have had such an experience? I said, "Series, what causes abdominal pain?" And she responded, "The following websites might be helpful." One website talked about 4 quadrants. The top right, the bottom right, the top left, the bottom left. The second website talked about 6 areas of pain. The top right, the top middle, the top left, the bottom right, the bottom middle, the bottom left. So, as a person with a brain injury, I should probably not trust my diagnostic reasoning, but I went through the list and I eliminated them all. Meanwhile, in the net saying, "Are you sure you don't want to go to the hospital? Why bother? I have no pain, the nausea's going away, and the volcanic heat flash is subsiding." And so it was that I ignored that pain. I don't keep very regular sleep hours, or if I do, they're upside down for most people. And I try not to interfere with the net sleep hours. So I tried to sleep on the daybed in the office. It wasn't working. I turned this way. I turned that way. I went to the foot of the bed. I went to the head of the bed. I was flipping and flopping and twisting and turning. I could not contain myself. So what did I do? I relocated to the living room and things did not get better. I continued to flip, I continued to flop, I continued to squirm this way, I continued to squirm that way. But it was the middle of the night and I just thought, you know, Nanette has to go work in the morning and I can't wake her up. So what did I do? I relocated to the bay window in the living room where we have this beautiful chaise, purple chaise. I wish I could faint. Not really. I wish I could sleep. But like Goldilocks and the Three Bears story, this used to be Goldie has made her way to a third location and I cannot get comfortable. I continue to flip and to flop, to scream and to squirm and turn and toss. I am dying of this unexplained pain. There is no calling Series this time. Instead, I go into the bedroom. The sleigh bed.
What?
Honey, I say, and she says, sleepy,
It's a nightmare.
sleepy. I say, pain. I make my way down the hall where the dog has continued to follow me. And I get to the bedroom. I say to my partner, honey, and she says, sleepy. I say, pain. She sits straight up in bed, and I say, hospital. And so it was that while she got dressed, I ran to the car in my doggie pajamas. And turning, I was pacing. I just couldn't sit still. I couldn't lay down. I couldn't just stand. I walked and paced, and so they took me right away. They put me in this room, and the nurse comes up to me, and I say, I have a traumatic brain injury. He says, we know. You have all my records. Is it my medication? No, it's not the medication. I've been told if I have sudden pain, it could be my liver. No, it's not your liver. And if I have dark stools, it could be my liver reacting to my medications. It's not your medication. Well, then the doctor comes in. I again try to self-diagnose, and I say to the doctor, is it my medications? And he says, no. How do you know? I have a brain injury. I know. Your records are right here. It's not your liver. It's not your brain injury. I am out of control, completely out of control, in severe pain, and making no sense. So they put me on an IV. Drip, 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 drip. The pain begins to subside. I begin to let them do their job of diagnosis. Oh, wow. How did you know it wasn't the brain injury and the medication? The doctor starts laughing at me. Laughing. What the hell is he doing laughing at a patient? The doctor and the nurse look at each other like there's some inside joke. And then he says to me, "You were doing the kidney stone dance." Oh my God. I had pain a couple of weeks ago that was really, really bad. But I didn't come in because it went away. Oh, that was probably a stone leaving the kidney, going into the urinary tract. And tonight, we think you passed it. And unfortunately, this is not a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. When a person has passed one stone, they are very likely to experience it again and pass another. So they sent me down for some test, and yes, indeed, there was a stone inside me, and they said drink lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of fluids. And the kidney stone finally passed without pain. I was very lucky. And the moral of this story is, if you or someone you love is flipping and flopping with the most unbelievable pain, don't wait. Go to the emergency room. If you or someone you love are doing the kidney stone dance, there are better ways to pass a stone than being in tremendous pain. Thank you. In the early days of the pandemic, spring 2020, a lot of people were going crazy looking for yeast to make homemade bread. I didn't have to worry about such things because I was fortunate enough to have my grandmother's Irish soda bread recipe, which uses baking soda, not yeast. Getting the recipe was a bit of a problem. Imagine my Irish grandmother crossing the Atlantic Ocean on a boat 100 years ago. She got here in the 1920s and got a very interesting job. She worked for the Newport elite as their cook with not much more than an 8th grade education. Even if she had that, she had one rule of thumb to keep the Newport people healthy. Put every color on the table and they will be well. As an adult, I later learned that simple rule of thumb was true because every color on the table represented a different vitamin, a different nutrition, and so it was. She kept them healthy. My Irish grandmother, who we called Mamie, cooked everything from scratch, and she never had a single recipe nor a single measuring utensil. I just thought it was magic How did she know how to cook with no recipes? And then my mother and I were determined to get the recipe. My grandmother would say, "Helene, would you be so kind as to pass me the flour?" And she would just pour it freehand into a larger pot. And then there was the sugar, the salt, and the most important ingredient, baking soda. Baking soda, although a wee little quantity, gave the bread its name. More times than not, Mamie would make her soda bread with regular milk and white vinegar. It didn't matter if it was a gallon of milk or a half gallon of milk, come pouring, cascading out of the container into the ingredients. The other wet ingredients included was beaten with a fork, a stick of butter. For some reason, she always used the land of legs, which I found very funny when I moved to Minnesota. What made my grandmother's Irish soda bread different from anybody else's were 3 special ingredients: caraway seeds, brown raisins, and golden raisins. When I came to Minnesota and discovered that people had bread, Irish soda bread, without those ingredients, I was in shock. That was not Irish soda bread. It was just plain whatever. So, as my grandmother was getting on with age, my mother was determined to get the recipe from a woman who never used a recipe. So one day, she begins with the flour and she pours that into a big bowl, and my mother snatches it from her. And she says, "Oh, Helene, what are you doing?" And she says, "Mother, please, I need to get your recipe." Well, it changes every time depending on the weather, the heat in the kitchen, the humidity of the day. "Mom, I just need something to start with." And my grandmother scolded her for being so silly until my mom said, "Mom, I have to get this recipe or something close to it before you pass away. Otherwise, I'll never be able to make your soda bread." And that is the reason my grandmother acquiesced and allowed my mother and me, oh so many years ago, to get her Irish soda bread recipe. Later on, my mother shared a secret of how to plump up the raisins before putting them in the mix. And she said, put them in a strainer and pour boiling water, and then suddenly these mushed up raisins from a box or package would just plump right up. I have since learned that some Irish do the same thing with whiskey or brandy. Every once in a while, my grandmother would say, "We need a wee bit more milk." And she would just pour some in. I said, "How do you know? How do you know you need more milk?" "It's the feel of the bread. I can feel it in my hands." How much is a wee bit? I mean, there was a difference between a wee bit, a little bit, and some more. Whatever the difference was, she knew. We had the basic recipe to which we could add a wee bit, a little bit, a sprinkling, or nothing at all. It was June 29th, 2005, and I was living on top of the world. My seniority in the Stagehands Union, IATSE Local 20 and Local 13, afforded me the best work opportunities in the theater. All of my plays won awards and received readings with professional actors, followed by audience discussions. And in my free time, I was sailing competitively with the Wayzata Yacht Club on Lake Minnetonka. I was loving my life. I was operating a spotlight for Kathy Rigby's final tour of Peter Pan at the Ordway Center for the Performing Arts. I was loving my life. And then, that morning, I went to the Xcel Energy Center to help set up for the Carlos Santana concert. Soon after coffee break, one of the stagehands let out a bellowing warning of danger. I flew headfirst off the edge of the stage and landed on the cement floor 6 feet below. Splat! I was knocked unconscious. Suddenly, an electrical surge through my brain caused a grand mal seizure and brought me back to consciousness. Paramedics arrived soon afterwards, and I was transported to Regents Hospital Trauma Center in St. Paul, Minnesota. Nothing in my life could have prepared me for the personal experience of Dante's Inferno and levels of hell that I would go through in the next number of years post-traumatic brain injury. Early on, I hated the stranger looking back at me. Previously, I was an eloquent speaker who could also talk in minute sound bites depending on the circumstance. The stranger looking back at me spoke in a foreign language that nobody understood, used made-up words to explain very common concepts, and stuttered, trying to collect her thoughts. I hated that stranger. Previously, I was a math wizard. The stranger couldn't do basic math. The stranger staring back at me in the mirror couldn't do basic math, and she'd never even bothered balancing her checkbook. I was fearless. Not in a cocky sense of the way, but in a comfort level, whether at work or on the water. I just was at home with life. The stranger, oh God, she would forget things. She was always second-guessing herself over and over and over again. Previously, I enjoyed cooking. The stranger, she would put food in the oven and then take the dog out for what was supposed to be a short walk, forget the food was in the oven, and come back hours later to yet another burnt dinner sitting in the sink because some kind neighbor heard the fire alarm go off and took my dinner out of the oven. I was intuitive. The stranger needed to learn not to be impulsive or do things compulsively without thinking about potential consequences. I loved to travel. The stranger would get lost, going to normal places that she'd been to over and over, hundreds of times. She would go into a store and forget what she had gone in for and come out an hour later and not know where her car was parked. Long-term and short-term memory were a nightmare. I was Marie, and that stranger staring me back in the mirror, she was a demonic imposter, and I hated her. It took me years to grieve the old person I had been and embrace the new person I had to be. One day, I walked into my counselor's office and said, "Leslie, I have embraced my life." And she said, "Come on in, Marie, tell me more." And I said, "I bought a sailboat." Now, I didn't want her to think that I was doing something impulsive or compulsive, which people with brain injuries are known to do. So I said, "Leslie, I have been watching this boat for months." And I called my friend Steve and said, "Can you look it up on the internet?" Every month the price went down, and this month it said best offer. So my friend Steve went on the internet, he looked at all the photos, and he said, "Marie, your long-term memory will serve you well." I never dreamed I'd own a sailboat. Now it's 16 years post-traumatic brain injury. I never dreamed I'd have another partner. Nanette loves me and accepts me. She and I attend more theater than any of our friends and family think is possible. I wear protective glasses so that the lights don't bother me, and I put on earplugs, and sometimes I have to leave, but basically it's all is well. And if I have to leave, I say, "Nanette, stay and watch the show, and I will live vicariously through you." I never dreamed I'd return to work, but I returned to work with the Stagehands Union and work part-time, mostly at the Ordway. I never dreamed I'd own a sailboat, let alone bring that sailboat up to Duluth, where I am now teaching people how to sail when they come to visit. We sail in Duluth Bay or out on Lake Superior. And finally, the merging of two households included the merging of my dog and her cats. When I look in the mirror now, I love my life. When I'm up in Duluth, I love my life. When I'm in St. Paul, I love my life. When I'm traveling about, I love my life. No matter where I am and what I'm doing, I've learned to love my life again. There's hope. Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise. Throughout my 30-some year career as a professional stagehand, I have been known to speak up in the workplace whenever anything inappropriate was said or done. So imagine my surprise when a coworker came up to me one day and said, "Marie, could I talk to you in private about something?" "Sure," I said. And so, after work, we had a very intimate conversation. "Marie, have you ever been with a woman who shaves?" "Shaves?" I asked. Now, he was a pretty confident man, And to ask me such a question rather sheepishly was quite a surprise. So I made a triangle with my two hands down to my crotch and asked, "Shaves?" He laughed, and I had signaled such a conversation was possible. Yes, it's been a long, long time ago. Oh God, 30 years. Early in my coming out days, I had a wonderful partner who was very sexually free and taught me to be very comfortable with my own body and with hers. And one day we were making love, and I had discovered that she had shaved all of her pubic hair. And 30 some years ago, this was not a regular practice that you can associate with today, where more people are doing body sculpting and exploring their own desires and others' desires of both public and private hair. So it's definitely more prevalent today than it was then. "I really like it," he said. Well, between consenting adults, anything goes. Personally, I have to say I didn't like it. Really? Why? Like I said, it wasn't prevalent and people didn't talk about it. Why are you asking me? Well, if I asked the guys, they'd probably laugh their asses off at me. He was probably right about that. So we continued our conversation. I've been with a lot of women. Yes, I can imagine so. It really turned me on. I'd never been with someone who had done this. It was new and it was exciting. What did you think about it? Personally, I didn't like it. Really? Why is that? Well, it wasn't very prevalent, and it was the first time I had ever been with a woman who completely shaved, and it was the first time my partner had done that. Trust me. Sometimes a little trim can be quite erotic foreplay. You know, as a lesbian woman, I wanted to make love with the woman. And suddenly, this reminded me of being a little girl. And I said, I can't do this. I can't make love with you until it grows out. I didn't know until then that my partner had experienced sexual abuse as a child. She was in counseling, and it really wasn't a conscious test, but my response to say, I can't do this, separated me as an adult from her childhood experience of having been sexually abused. And it was actually an important part of her healing that I said no. I didn't know this until after I said, no, I can't do this. Her pubic hair grew out, and, you know, we returned to the sexual foreplay of having a nice trim. You know, don't want to have a jungle down there. My coworker laughed, and he goes, yeah, sometimes it can be. And me, Marie, now I'm embarrassed. You don't have to be embarrassed. Like I said, between consenting adults, it's fine. Then he said, with sadness in his eyes, my partner has the same history. Should I tell her the same thing? And I said, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to hear about that. It is prevalent, and some people don't feel comfortable bringing it up with a sexual partner. It's really important that you find a time and a place that is appropriate for the two of you to have a conversation about why she chose to shave. It may have been a freeing experience for her, but if she was, like many women, physically reverting back to a childhood time of when inappropriate things happened, it's important that the two of you talk about that. And if it's more of the body sculpting thing that is more prevalent today, it's important that you talk about that. So, thank you. Thank you for having the courage to talk to me about this. I had another unexpected, intimate conversation with another straight male coworker. One day he said, "Oh, Marie, I have to tell you about someone I'm dating." "Oh, congratulations," I said. "It's just wonderful. I'm absolutely crazy about her." "Excellent. I'm ready to take it to the next level of intimacy," said this older straight male friend of mine. I sense a level of hesitancy or a question. Yes. Have you ever known a woman who has had a mastectomy? As a matter of fact, yes. Friend or partner? Yes. Friendship's a great base from which a partnership might or might not come. Is there some hesitancy on either part moving to the next level of intimacy? And he said, yes. Well, I have known women who've had mastectomies, various kinds, including a complete bilateral mastectomy. Did you have a physical relationship? Well, yes and no. A friend of mine said where her breast had previously been became a no-touch zone with her then partner as well as future people she had dated. This was rather heartbreaking because I found her to be a very sensuous friend, a very sensuous woman, and I just loved and adored her. Do you mind if I ask, do you have physical feeling there? And she said, I don't know. This kind of took me by surprise. Have you massaged yourself or in the shower, feeling water? You know, what is your level of feeling? How about your nipples? Do you have feeling there? And again, she said, I don't know. I asked, if you want, I'd be happy to massage you. Just physically, not sexually, just massage you and see how comfortable you feel with somebody touching you. And she actually said yes. And sometime later, she asked if we could be more intimate. I said, okay. And we went to her bedroom. There were various lotions and ointments. And I sat up with my back to the headboard and invited her to lay down in front of me. And she did. And I just started to massage her and said, "How does this feel?" She says, "Nice, thank you." And then I continued. And we talked, allowed me to explore her body. And again, it was an honor to have this level of trust with her as well as with you. So if you want, you can tell the woman you're dating, we've had this conversation, and tell her I said, "Congratulations, I wish you both well." Suggest a shared bath. Actually, I find body das bath very, very, very relaxing. Concentrate on her. Do not think of any of your own sexual responses. And you might have them. I mean, you're a nice, healthy adult male and beautiful woman that you're now dating, but keep the focus on her and massage her body and ask. It's really nice to ask, to be asked, and have a response of, "Yes, thank you." We need to be in a society where we don't assume the next step is going to continue to completion of sexual arousal and orgasm. So I'm glad you're asking me about this. If she's not comfortable with a bath, stay fully clothed and ask her to come to bed. And if she might be comfortable exploring the feelings on her body, ask her. Ask her if you might cross this bridge together. And the next time we work together, he said, "Thank you. Your suggestions helped." And we've progressed to the next level of intimacy. And I said, "Congratulations." Another straight male friend of mine asked if we might have a conversation about something rather personal. He was a friend who I often sailed with. And an older gentleman, he asked in a rather reserved manner, not knowing if it was about to cross the line of too personal, he asked, "Marie, I was wondering if you might help me out with sexual intimacy with women." And I said, "You're a lot older than me, and I would think that you're rather experienced enough. Why are you asking me?" Well, I want to learn more about oral sex with women. Would that be okay? Sure. You're a lot older than I, and I would suspect that you might have had this before. And he said, "Actually, no. My former wives were not interested, and none of the women I've been with wanted to be a recipient of oral sex. I said, well, as you've learned, not everybody's comfortable with that. And it's good that you're asking. And he said, I really want to be able to bring her greater pleasure. And there are some other issues at hand. And once again, I had a straight male friend who was now involved with someone who had had a mastectomy. And we had the previous conversation about reclaiming the off-limit parts of your body post-surgery. If that were the case, I agreed that a continued conversation about oral sex would be a lot more understandable if I could bring a visual aid. And he goes, visual aid? I said, yes. Believe it or not, the best explanation of oral sex for a woman was found in the book, The Joy of Lesbian Sex. And of course he started to laugh, and I said, they have some great graphics. And there's one graphic in particular I'd like to share with you. So the next time we were alone, I put my book in a brown paper bag, so I handed him the book. And he said with great delight, oh, you brought it. I said, yes, I did. And he unwrapped it like it was a tremendous Christmas gift. And I had put a bookmark in the page just in case I wasn't able to share it with him because of other people. And we were alone. So he opened up the book to the bookmark, and there was a picture. And I said, a lot of people don't have experience seeing the inner and outer labia of women. I'm sure you've felt them, but as you can see in this picture, the inner and outer labia are just two sets of lips. And if you think of them as that way, the kissing of lips of any kind can be quite sensuous. And sometimes a person wants to be kissed and sometimes a person doesn't. Some women, myself included, are not always in the mood for oral sex. Having said that, that doesn't mean I'm never in the mood. And that's an important thing to know. Communication is key. Ask if interested, and when given an answer, politely ask for more information if this is something never interested in, sometimes interested in, or unsure of at this time. Having said that, I took a leap of faith and shared my own sexual history and said, in my younger days especially, I was very aware of the sense, the changing scent of my body, where I was in my menstrual cycle, premenstrual, postmenstrual, menstrual. I might not be interested at all because I was very conscientious about my bodily smells. I had a wonderful partner who was very attuned to this. I know other women throughout their life, it was important to communicate and say, no, not now, yes, maybe later, or they're not interested in, and that's okay, as you have learned. And I'm glad that you've respected that. For some reason, you want to re-explore this possibility, and I commend you for that. One thing I can suggest, that I often suggest, is intimate baths. A shared shower or a shared bath is a wonderful way that you're all on the same scent. Another thing a former partner of mine taught me is positioning. A sideway position might be helpful. Asking a woman to lift her body, her butt, onto a pillow, more secure than a bed pillow, might be helpful. And one of the things that I learned is you're bending your neck too high. It's uncomfortable for the person providing pleasure, and it might be uncomfortable for the person receiving it. So by hiking one partner up, there's greater accessibility and the ability to explore. And the tantalizing exploration with your tongue can be nice, and it can be quite erotic to have your clitoris stimulated. And what I, as a woman, didn't realize till I saw this picture in The Joy of Lesbian Sex is that the clitoris is not the whole kit and caboodle. It's a very important part for a woman's sexual exploration. But as you can see in this picture, there's the outer labia, the inner labia, the tip of the clitoris, and then the clitoris is almost daddy long legs spider. That from the head of the clitoris are two extensions to the left and right sides behind the labia, which provide the extensive sexual pleasure that a woman can feel. So while we might think that the visual head of the clitoris is the only source of pleasure, it's actually the whole clitoris that has feelings throughout the whole labia, and the inner and outer labia that will make both physical exploration by hand or mouth or penis or other sexual aids possible. I encourage you to ask if you can explore the possibilities at some time, and when it's mutually agreed upon, have a good time. Another thing that a partner taught me is the exploration of not only touch, but hot and cold. And the wet dripping of an ice cube onto the clitoris is an amazing feeling. And that can be stimulating, but it can also be cooling down appointment. Pre-traumatic brain injury, I was a woman who experienced multiple orgasms while making love. I don't know if that'll be possible in the future, but previously it was something I was fortunate to experience. And there would be a cooling down period where you could concentrate on your partner, and then a heating up time when she might concentrate on you, and blow me out of the water period when you might concentrate on each other, and go back and forth. and explore the inner thighs, and then take a detour between her legs, and then explore her stomach and her chest and her arms, and take another detour, and the hot sensuousness of a warm mouth can be a wonderful experience when desired. Take the book home, read the chapter, share if you want that you learned something from a lesbian woman, and the joy of lesbian sex. Good luck. Good luck in your future endeavors. Thanks for asking. I really appreciate your honesty and openness and this unexpected conversation. I love you. You are a wonderful friend.